I say we go ahead and get started, and we can let people in if they come. Alrighty. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Slideshow from beginning. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Can you see my screen okay, Caroline? All right, everyone.
See your screen if you're sharing.
Oh, you cannot. All right, let's try one more time. All right, can you see my screen now? All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Molly Yanis with Echolocity, and today I hope you're joining us to talk about what's new with Smartsheet. So to get us going, I've got Caroline Henney here with me today. She's one of our solution consultants and Smartsheet nerds. However, Caroline is much more diverse than just Smartsheet. She is also our practice lead for Microsoft. You may have seen her most recently in her beautiful portfolio video. And my name is Molly Yanis. I am the founder, and I am also a solution architect here at Echolocity. Just a couple of quick moments. So Echo is Echo. We used to be Echo Consulting. Now we talk about Echolocity. We talk a lot about traction and velocity and all that jazz. We offer project management, staff augmentation, team extension services. If you have a really big, important project that you're looking for some extra help with, we do training. We do off-sites and on-site trainings. We do some workshop facilitation. It's the beginning of 2025, and hopefully all of your strategic plans are up to date. But if not, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We do a lot with solution implementation for project management, how to set up a PMO, change management, risk management, how to be more proactive in managing your work, more strategic. We talk a lot about capacity planning and forecasting and resource management. One of the #1 issues year over year is about, do you have the right people working on the right things? And so anyways, we do a lot with that. And then there's more specifics about bid, CRMs, all sorts of lots of fun. But really, when it comes down to it, we're talking about low code, no code, flexible technology platforms that we help organizations adopt so that they can really lean into their productivity workflows and things like that. So some of our key partners here at Echolocity are Smartsheet, Microsoft, as well as a wide variety of other project management and work management tools. But today, hopefully you're here joining us to talk about Smartsheet and what's new in the world of Smartsheet. Before we get started, I like to just, every time we do this webinar about once a quarter to talk about what's new at Smartsheet. If you have found us, probably the #1 way people find us is actually from our YouTube channel. We have over 100 different Smartsheet videos now, anywhere from how to set up a PMO in Smartsheet to how to do a metric sheet. What's the difference between a summary report and a regular report, how to do metrics. So there's a lot of different videos, anywhere from quick how-to videos to longer, more strategic videos. And we have these webinars as well. So if you're wondering what's new in Smartsheet over the last year, you can check out these webinars on what's new with Smartsheet. Kelly and I actually were at Smartsheet Engage last year. I believe it was in October, maybe November. And we were there on site. We got to meet so many different clients in person and other partners, and everyone was jazzed up about what's going on with Smartsheet, with resource management, with their acquisition, et cetera. So YouTube videos. Also, if you have not and you are a Smartsheet user or are considering becoming a Smartsheet user, we definitely recommend checking out their product release notes. You can actually subscribe to these. We will open this up in a second and show you a couple of the release notes because Caroline will be helping me demo some of them today. What I love in a partner in a platform is when they provide those product release notes, but also provide access to their product roadmap. and commit to actually getting them out when they say they're going to get them out. That really gives me a lot of confidence in the platform that they are listening to their consumers. One of the things that I remember from Smartsheet Engage was their chief product officer, I think his name is Ben, was actually up there, and he knew the top 20 items on their community for votes. And he could actually, like, off the top of his head being like, you know what, nope, that's not top 10, that's number 13. That means a lot to me in a platform partner when they really take into consideration what their clients are asking for, and not just the big guys, not just the Fortune 100s. So anyways, product release notes, very important. The other piece I'll always mention is if you are a Smartsheet nerd like us and you want to know what's coming down the pike, they do have the Smartsheet Early Adopter Program. What I will mention is that this is kind of like the beta users, right? You're starting to get some of the functionality ahead of time. It doesn't mean that that functionality is always going to be available. So they actually just wrote to the Smartsheet Early Adopter Program within the last month and said, hey guys, thank you so much for your feedback on some of the work app pieces, but we are going to be rolling that back. So I do want to mention, if you haven't, sign up for the product release notes. If you're interested in seeing functionality as it becomes available, being a beta tester, and getting to kind of start using this ahead of time, I would recommend signing up for the Smartsheet Early Adopter Program. I will just mention, with the Smartsheet Early Adopter Program, you can do that either as an individual or as an organization. If you're doing it as an individual, you might have functionality that you're using in Smartsheet that someone else on another team might not have. At Echo, as a partner, we've signed up, everyone has Smartsheet Early Adopter Program, which is great because it means everyone on our team has access to the latest and greatest functionality and testing it out. But it can cause problems when we're doing a demo or something, because we might be showing something that other people don't have access to yet. So again, highly recommend the Early Adopter Program, but just be aware of your organization if they're comfortable with some of the beta functionality. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into the product release notes. Hopefully this is going to share. Are you still seeing my screen, Caroline, product release notes?
Yes.
Okay, so I get these in an email as new things become available. You can click on this Get Updates and you can get your own updates on Smartsheet. But you can also just look here. You'll see that there's Smartsheet Default, which is their commercial version, which is their most likely. You have Smartsheet Commercial, Smartsheet Default. They do have an EU version because of some of the data requirements in the European Union. And then they have Smartsheet Gov. Smartsheet is still the only approved work management platform, I think, of the US government. So they do have a Gov platform. Some of our clients that are like defense contractors and things like that, even though they're private, they end up on Gov just because of the security components that they need. So in Smartsheet Default, which is what we're going to focus on today, you'll see what the releases are and when they happen. So we're going to focus on Default, which again used to be called Smartsheet Commercial. It's their most common platform tenant. We are going to talk about several of these today. I think Caroline's going to walk us through some of the timeline components that are now available. I know in the last session we talked a lot about collections and we talked a little about program reports. If we have time, we'll touch on that again. But because that's mostly for our clients that utilize Control Center and some of the advanced add-on functionality, we'll try to start with the stuff that's available to most clients, even if they're just on business or enterprise and don't have the advanced functionalities like Control Center, like Dynamic View and things like that. But even if it is something that is from one of their add-ons, you can see this all here. If you want to, you can search. There's also ways to kind of filter this down. But when you see this, it just says, you know, hey, there's some updates. You can create timelines directly from your workspace. This is they'll send an email out to this and it'll just show you some really basic stuff that you can do here. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's a pretty common release notes piece and you can sign up for them. I'm going to go back to the presentation for just a second, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, okay. So before we dive into actually demoing some functionality that we've been playing around with, I want to give a couple updates from the Smartsheet newsroom. So I know no one here has heard about AI and how AI is going to transform the world and work management and project management and all that jazz. In December, Smartsheet's been, playing with AI like everyone else in the hype, but they're now calling themselves an AI enhanced enterprise grade work management platform. Not 100% what they're trying to get there, but they got the AI for SEO purposes. Enterprise grade, they have 85% of the Fortune 500 companies, but they want to say, hey, guess what? We're enterprise. Oh, by the way, we can be, like along the sides of ServiceNow and Microsoft and SAP and everything else. That's what they're saying with this enterprise grade. We already know that they are in 85% of Fortune 500. So they definitely work with big companies, but they also work with small companies and everything in between. If you didn't know, they're making a lot of money. And oh, by the way, they're going to be acquired. And so they announced this in October of 2024, but they got final approval from their shareholders. We anticipate that that transaction is going to complete at the end of January. So Smartsheet as a company, their annual is not a calendar year, it's a fiscal year, and their fiscal year ends January 31st. So if you're a client of Smartsheet and you are thinking about buying extra licensing, heads up, they want to do lots of wheeling and dealing right now because they are trying to hit their numbers for 2025. If you need help dealing with sales and licensing and all that jazz, we can help with that. So just letting you guys know. All right, FYI, they're getting purchased by Vista Equity Partners and Blackstone together. I went on and just gave you guys a couple of things. It's interesting. So Vista Equity Partners has some other software that they have purchased recently too. They have Pipedrive, which is more of the CRM side of things. They have Drift, they have EngageSmart. You can go on to Vista Equity and see what they purchased. But anytime where they're buying like several different software technology companies, you're interested to see like, are they looking to keep them unique, or are they looking to go ahead and put them all together in some new functionalities like acquisitions, mergers, and things like that. So it'll be interesting there. Other things, Smartsheet commissioned a report. About 1,500 people took it, more than 200 different companies. And basically they're saying, hey, what's going on with project management and portfolio management? And what are the key struggles? And what do we need to focus on? And things like that. And the results were not shocking. They are very much in line with what we know, which is a lot of project managers struggle with the rate of change right now, okay? The priorities are constantly shifting, and the communication about shifting priorities is not always ideal. The communication and the collaboration, both vertical, right, like with boards and senior leadership and the project teams and line workers, but also just across the silos of organizations where the IT projects versus the marketing project versus the finance project, how are they managed? Are they managed all the same? It's across the board. And then the other piece is just not having, at Echo, we talk about this in terms of transparency, but limited access to critical data. So do the decision makers have the data that they need at the right time, at the right level to be able to make informed decisions? And it's so critical to have the right information of the right people at the table at the right time. And it really does cause, they say, detriment of business outcomes in, research speak. But basically, if you don't know what's going on and you don't have the information about the project or the budget or why the change is happening or something like that, it's really hard to make that decision. And so platforms like Smartsheet and other work management platforms are saying, hey, how do we opt to enter things in 5 different locations, but have information that is tailored to our executive stakeholders and our leadership and our boards, but also to our project managers and also to the project teams and things like that? How do we have that visibility at every level of our organization that is tailored to the goals and to the needs of the individual departments and teams? So anyways, if you are interested in this report, it's available for free. It basically says, hey, platforms like Smartsheet are really helpful to provide transparency and accountability and make the work experience better. So happy to share that if anyone has any questions. All right, with that, let's jump into the actual platform demo. Kelly, glad to see you were able to join us after all. And then what I'll just say is we're going to do a couple of demos, but we always leave it open to questions and things like that if people want to drive it in a specific direction. We definitely don't have to take the full hour, but we're always happy to stay on and answer any specific use case questions if we come up with any. And I'm sorry in advance, in case you couldn't tell, I have a very adorable golden retriever puppy or golden doodle puppy behind me, which would like my attention as well. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Caroline, if I can pass it over to you and you can walk us through the project timeline view.
Let me just share my screen. Just a sec.
And I'll jump into Smartsheet as well so that I can bring up a demo after you.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
I can.
Great. One of the things that has come up a few times in the last few months just for new product releases, and just one of the new features that Smartsheet is really excited about is the development they've done. They've made some changes overall. So I wanted to just first show, there used to be a separate link for the Solution Center for Smartsheet. The homepage looked a little bit different. They've been changing a lot of this around. So now when you click either here on this plus button or here on the Start a New Project, Program, or Process, they changed that language too. Now they've added in Program and Process. This is the way you're going to get to essentially what was the old Solution Center. So now it's giving you start with a popular template and then view all templates. This is where you're going to get back to those nice solution template sets. And they have some easy filtering here to look at what's been recently added, what applies to different things like resource management, dynamic view, and so on. So I just wanted to show that first. If you haven't tried to dig into that at all since the changes, that's your new way to get to this view, is the plus sign here or the plus on the homepage. The other capability that they've really been adding on to is this timeline view. So if I scroll down here, if you think to your normal Smartsheet workspaces, I can just show an example. I've got a workspace here. If from this workspace view, I click on Create, it used to be you would just see a couple things here. You could create a new grid, you could create a new report, you could create a new dashboard, folder, or workspace. They've really started to fill out your options for what you can create from scratch, essentially. And the other piece, if I just go back to this view, is they're excited about the ability to now create directly from a timeline. And if you haven't tried that, this is really a view of the data, but you don't have to start from the grid view the way you used to, and then switch it to another view. So now if I just click on this, I'm going to get just a real simple version of a timeline view, but you can actually start directly from here now, which is cool. It's going to create this sheet in the timeline view in a new workspace for you if you want to do that. The other pieces, if you haven't explored this timeline view very much, they've added a couple of other new things. So let's take a look first at kind of the older view. This is based on some data that looks like this, some parent level tasks or set of tasks with some child rows underneath, with a team that are each allocated to a team and assigned to particular people and have start and end dates. You know, great. It could be anything along these lines with a project plan or something that's got those dates on them that you're trying to track. Now, when you switch this to this timeline view here that says new, you get the nice left to right timeline with the kind of filtering and everything that we want to see now in our more advanced platforms like this. So I'm looking at it from the months view. If I scroll out, zoom out just a little bit, I can look at it by quarters. And this can be really useful for seeing how things, you know, essentially stack up or overlap on top of each other for the timeline. Another new piece here, the view itself is relatively new, but they've been just adding more and more functionality to it. So now if you have something like a parent row, you can actually expand and collapse directly within the timeline view. So this is the parent product development, and I've got these 3 subtasks. If I click into any subtask, I can pull up the details over here and edit the task directly from the timeline view, which is also a relatively new feature. I can, the way that these are grouped here on the left-hand side, this is actually looking at that team column. So I can choose to group by a different criteria, like a different category. So if I wanted to group by status instead, and look at the timeline for my tasks that are not started, in progress, blocked, and complete, and so on. So I would really encourage people to take a look at this and play around. It does look a little different from the old Gantt view in Smartsheet. If we kind of flip back to that, the Gantt view is really kind of a side-by-side view with the old grid. And it's definitely sort of a more, old-fashioned looking Gantt view. It's not quite as easy intuitive functionality when you switch similar kind of idea, but getting more and more robust with what you can do with it and getting very easy to really see the data that goes into this timeline rather than having to flip back and forth between one view and another. Are there anybody have any questions on that in particular? I'm happy to look at this a little more if there's anything folks would like to look at.
I think one of the things, Caroline, that they're excited about, right, is like you can actually add and delete things from the timeline view. So when we first got the timeline view, it was really just like pretty much instead of looking at the Gantt view, you could look at it in this view and it looked prettier. And I think that they were trying to compete with the Mondays and Asanas and ones that just kind of have some prettier lines to them than the Gantt view. And but I would say now there's actually adding more functionality so people can actually work within the timeline view, which is how we're picturing it. I wouldn't use this necessarily day to day in a project meeting, but if I was sitting down with some executives and trying to get some stuff from a strategic plan, I would probably be more likely to do it in a view like this or a board versus a grid view. It's so interesting since Smartsheet brand is literally all about sheets, and one of their biggest pieces for like great adoption is the fact that everyone kind of understands how the grid, how the sheet works because of Excel, and that's kind of what we're all familiar with and executives are familiar with. But then they kind of get dinged on some of the views that some of the prettier views that Monday and Asana and Teamwork and everything are providing, and Smartsheet's really, going head to head with that right now, which I'm fairly excited about. And then when Kelly and I were at Engage, this timeline view, but if you go up there to the other views other than timeline, you'll see the one that's in preview, the table view. The table view is basically taking grid and making it way more scalable and potentially like what some people consider to be better looking, if that makes sense. So they're still very much working on it. It's in preview, but the capacity of the table view and what it's going to be able to do is multiples ahead of what grid and any of the other mid-market project management tools are allowing for right now. So we are excited about the updates to the user interface and the updates to the number of records that can be managed in that. Same concept with board versus card. Card, they were getting dinged on for Kanban and things like that because there were limited abilities to really tailor the card. With the new board view, the swim lanes and the ability to change how those boards and those views show up are really expanded. So we anticipate in 2025 and beyond that Smartsheet's going to continue to invest in these views that look a little bit more modern and more exciting, and still maintain their hold on their ability to manage complex, larger projects as well.
Great. I can give the screen back. I saw Kelly was able to join too. I don't know if there's anything in particular she wanted to demo, if there's anything else she'd like to walk through, Molly.
The big thing, Kel, I think with the board view, not the board view, the timeline view, right, is that we're anticipating the ability to make some updates from conditional formatting and things like that within the timeline view, not just having to use the conditional formatting that is within the grid and things like that. And so that'll give us a lot more options as well. For those of you that are familiar with the add-on, the calendar view, a lot of that was available there. It just didn't have the flexibility of schedule, and again, it's still kind of a little bit clunky. So I'm really pumped about the timeline view. As a project manager, I still prefer to be in the grid view and or the card view with my teams on like a project manager basis. But if I'm with executives and I'm trying to paint the picture and use some real visualizations of data and things like that, that's when I'm more likely to use views like this because they might be a little bit less distracting, easier ability to kind of really focus my audience on what I need them to decide on and what I need to be aware of.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the biggest update people are waiting for is to be able to add this to the dashboards. So that has not come yet, but that'll be pretty big just because it is a more aesthetically pleasing view than a Gantt view, for example. Sometimes it can require a little bit more configuration than the Gantt view, but it does look like they're making it a lot more intuitive and helpful, like with the expanding of tasks that Caroline just showed. But that'll be an exciting one, especially to show like a phase view or a phase and milestone view if we're talking about project management. So I'm definitely excited for that.
Yeah.
And Caroline,
Awesome.
to your point, the only thing, if we're moving off timeline, the main thing I wanted to make sure that we covered today was collections. I don't know if that's if that was on your guys' agenda.
I thought that, Kelly, you had said that we had covered collections a couple of times. The two ones that I was thinking of is the documentation, what's it called, the file library, and just like how we're seeing that. I wanted to make sure that everyone still knew how to get to the solution library because I think it's so important that people are not starting from scratch. So they say start new project, program, or process, but also you don't have to start a sheet from scratch. Oftentimes we'll look through the template library. So we have a client right now that has a very complex budget process, invoicing, expense tracking, multiple vendor management, and things like that. Even with that, where we know we're not going to, we typically start from either a previous client that we've dealt a budget piece out for, or we'll go to the solution center, find a solution set, and then build off of that, just so that you're not starting from scratch. So if you're not familiar with the Solution Center, they've kind of hidden it. They're calling it templates and create now. I do recommend that you are looking at those solution sets before digging in, creating a sheet from scratch, even if it is very basic that you're starting from. Kelly, the other piece, which I'm not sure because I'm not in resource management right now, but in the product roadmap or the product release, they did talk about the resource management phase integration, which I think is really interesting, where you previously had to kind of build it in. Now you have access to that phase piece. But if you have collections up and want to show something, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me try to find it. Yeah, so we've talked about collections on past what's new in Smartsheet webinars, but we haven't been able to demo it. We've just gotten access to it. So I actually do have a view. So let me share my screen. Okay, so if you haven't been with us before, you haven't watched the recording or you haven't heard of this yet, Smartsheet has come out with a new functionality called Collections, which addresses the concept of improved permissioning. So for a long time, as long as I've been working in Smartsheet, I know users have been asking for folder level sharing because if you're familiar with Smartsheet, you know that previously it was pretty much individual assets, so an individual sheet, report, or dashboard, or the entire workspace. Now, that doesn't always work, right? Because if we think about a use case, I'm going to use project management example, but I'm sure Molly, you can shout out some other examples or we could come up with some. But if I think about projects, right, we usually work with clients and they have what we call like a project toolkit. So it's a set of resources that they use to manage their projects, a project schedule, a RAID log, right, a dashboard, a budget sheet, invoice tracking, things like that. So for different stakeholders though, right, if we have all of that data in one workspace, which typically we do, sometimes we have multiple projects in one workspace, different audience members need to see different things. And potentially there's also specific assets that you don't want people to see, like your budget sheet. Like that might be private information or more confidential, right? Where you don't need everybody on the project seeing that information. So that being said, I think I've quoted this a few times and I just like it because I think it's like simple and funny, but I can't remember his exact title, but he's like the senior director of product experience or something, Ben Canning at Smartsheet, and he called it collections folder level sharing, but better. So, and if you're familiar with work apps, it can be comparable to work apps. So right now I am in the new workspace navigation panel, which you can see over here on the left, that little icon that shows up when you navigate into an asset within a workspace. This will eventually replace what we know as browse. They're not quite there yet, so there's still both experiences. And within each workspace, there is an option for what's called collections. And essentially, if I go, so I've created a couple collections, you can select specific assets to add to a collection and then grant permissions to that collection that are different from the workspace permissions. So in this use case, right, if we're thinking about a leadership audience, leadership doesn't need to weed through the project schedule. I mean, maybe they want to see the project schedule, but they don't need to weed through all the different assets of the schedule and the rate and the reports and all of that. They want to see the dashboard. They want to see the high level information. They want to see the risks that are coming up, right? They want to see the more targeted information. So this collection here has different dashboards from multiple projects. So again, what this means is like leadership could log into Smartsheet. They can go to the collection that they have access to and only see the assets that you want them to see. I also created one for project team members just to give you a different flavor. So for project team members, oftentimes those team members need to see the project plan and the CRADE log. Right? They don't, again, like if I'm a project contributor, I want to be able to add risks and issues that I see coming up, but I might not need to see the budget sheet or the invoice tracking. So within each collection, you can set permissions. You can see share collection. You can add items to a collection from any workspace. So the collection has to have a home. So the home is within a workspace, but you can add assets across multiple workspaces. So hypothetically, I think I've talked about this concept. I did a video on YouTube recently, and you could have a workspace that's just for some collections and then share folks access to those collections, and then the assets within the collection could be from multiple different workspaces. So you can see here, like I can scroll and look at anything in here, and I could say, okay, yeah, I also want to add this CRADE log and this project plan, add. Right, and then it gives you options for if you want the permissions to be viewer, commenter, or editor. So this is where that's kind of similar to work apps, if you're familiar, where it has those kind of 3 different permission levels. But it does allow you more flexibility in editing. There's some limited editing capabilities within work apps. So this one's a little bit better, and it's within the same Smartsheet experience, which is definitely a benefit. There are some permission pieces to be aware of with this. So if you give someone access to a collection that's in a workspace, add like a viewer to something, but that user actually is an admin on the workspace, they're actually going to have admin permissions to anything within the collection. So the user is going to have the highest level permission set that they're granted in the workspace. Like the workspace kind of trumps the collection. Molly, any questions? I hope I explained that clearly. Let me ask a question if I did not.
No, I thought that was very good. And I actually put your video, Kelly, on collections because that must have been what I was thinking about, that we'd already shown that. So I mentioned earlier, we do have a YouTube channel with lots of different Smartsheet videos on there. That's how most people find out about Echo, because we're just a small women-owned company. But they find us because we have really good videos on how to do things in Smartsheet and how to help people. A couple of things I just want to call out. I gave you guys Kelly's specific video on collections. I mentioned the community here, and Kelly mentioned Ben, who I also mentioned, right? So if you haven't been to the Smartsheet community, I highly recommend that you check it out. It can be a great resource for people that have questions. It's a pretty responsive community. But as we were talking about it, right, there's discussions, there's different topics, there's support that you can get, but then there's also product ideas. And so Kelly was mentioning a product idea that people have been asking for, right? Well, folder level permissions are it. However, you can see that within folder level permissions, you can upvote that, right? And they give you an update of when something is going to be working on. You can also see trending ideas. People are adding in new ideas. So anyways, some of this stuff is things that you can vote on and say, hey, we really want this. I know that I sometimes tell my team, being like, hey, upvote this. I really want this to get moving. But it's also just helpful, right? You're not alone. You're part of a community. You're trying to solve things. And honestly, they're very, very responsive. I would say that they're more responsive than Smartsheet support. And I'm not trying to dig Smartsheet support. I'm just saying the community is really, really helpful. So if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. Caroline, if you can show file library, I would love to just highlight that for everyone. These are kind of new things that were talked about in Engage, but they're really just now coming out. And file library is so interesting because Smartsheet has the ability to add attachments. They've had a while, like connectivity with the ability to add links and Dropbox and things like that. Now they're adding file library. I just wonder from their product roadmap, are they trying to compete with other document management systems? They purchased Brandfolder, which is that digital asset management and everything like that. So what is the use case that we're talking to clients about with this file library piece? Why would you use it versus just using an attachment in a line, in a row, or a link or something else? I'll drop that onto you, Caroline.
Excuse me. So I was just navigating, and I apologize. I've been coughing a little bit if I suddenly go silent. So the file library is also something that can be added to a workspace. So the same way that Kelly showed how to create a collection for a workspace, from the workspace level, you will also now have the option. Does everyone now have access to this, Kelly? Do you know, or is it just early adopters? Okay. I don't always track when it moves from early adopters to being available to everyone. So everyone can now see this option here at a workspace level to add a file.
Yeah, I do want to call out, sorry, really quick before you jump in. And let me just confirm this for file library. Collections, I believe you have to be on the new user subscription model to have access to. File library has moved out of early adopter. I think that one's available for everyone, but I'm going to double check while you're talking about the feature, and I'll follow up in the chat to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Kel.
This, if you haven't thought about why you might need this before, this is actually something we also get requests for a lot of. We're managing all this stuff in Smartsheet. We've created a bunch of sheets and dashboards, but we have all these other files that people need to have access to. And the workaround for that is often you can do attachment, like Smartsheet has the capacity to add attachments directly to a sheet or to rows on a sheet. And for a while, that was our kind of recommended workaround, was you create a document list and you attach each document to a row in that list or something like that. With the file library, you now can directly add a file library, just like it sounds, to the workspace. And it's going to work kind of like Teams within Microsoft, that within this group, within this workspace, everyone who has access to the workspace will be able to access this file library. You can see I have a few different, there's a lot of different kinds of files you can add. A lot of this functionality is pretty intuitive. You'd be able to figure it out pretty easily. But one cool thing that is going to be useful, I think, and it's something Smartsheet has really been expanding a lot in, is the marketing space and being able to actually do markups and annotations on files. Like on an image file, there's now some annotation capability. I can do things, well, I don't necessarily need to do that, but if I click in and start actually drawing, like, what is this? And add comments and annotations, as well as just your normal comments, like, add this, please, with the capability to tag somebody the way we like. directly within Smartsheet. And so this is a really cool functionality that we've heard. There's a lot of other design tools and everything that get used for this, but now it's actually something you can do directly within Smartsheet and this file library and easily converse with the other folks that have access to that file library. You can save, this version, or you can, I think there's a reset option here. Yeah, if I just want to reset back to whatever I had before. And you could have a conversation in the comments just like you normally can. You can copy a link to this version of the file with the annotations and comments on it if you want to. You can add tags to the file so that you're able to filter and find, particular tags. Let's see.
Something else to add, Caroline, on the annotations, just a couple things. There are, if you go back, there are a few different options, which is cool. You can like make squares around things or circles around things, or you can just point to them. So that's cool if you're like looking at I don't know, I've seen examples for like a marketing flyer or something like that. You can do that, which is really cool. And then when you go to the comment, I'm pretty sure like when you click on the one, like it will show you where it is. And then if you upload a video, you can also annotate like at a specific point in the video. So it's just kind of cool because it's allowing you to make annotations, because without that functionality, you're adding comments, but you have to be like, hey, at minute 3 and 16 seconds, this is what's going on, or hey, in the top left hand. So this just kind of makes it a little bit clearer for communication. They talked a lot at Smartsheet Engage about asynchronous collaboration and not needing like as many meetings because you're able to like clearly articulate, updates and feedback and things like that. So just wanted to call those additional highlights out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things that we're seeing, not just for the smaller organizations and clients, right? But we've got so many different tools, even at Echolocity, right? We have so many different tools. We have a video tool, we have a Canva, we have all these different tools in all these different places, right? And Smartsheet has really robust task management, workflows management, project management capabilities. But if you have to go someplace else for this document, someplace over here to do like approvals and everything for marketing, it can get overwhelming and it can be really hard to come in the beginning of the day and know all the different things that you have to get done in prioritization. So with Smartsheet, what they're trying to do, they've been doing this over the course, but they're trying to bring it all together into a more cohesive all-in-one platform where they're not specializing in one, but they're really kind of broadening out some of their capabilities. And so if you think about that, they had proofing, they've had it for a year. If you haven't checked it out, you can add proofs, you can have different versions of the document. You can do a lot of what what we just showed within document, the file library, but you didn't have the ability to look at it in terms of, hey, here are all of our files. You can, and looking at it in like a broad perspective. So it's just providing a different way of navigating to some of these things and providing accessible features in Smartsheet across multiple different use cases. So it just allows for more flexibility. And also it just allows us to stay in the same platform longer without having to go to multiple different platforms to be able to execute on a very typical workflow, which is, hey, I'm working on something. I want you to check this out. I want you to provide my feedback. I want you to review or approve it, or I want something like that. Instead of having to have a document, having it in SharePoint, having it in Teams, go back and forth between, hey, yep, now I'm done this, trying to put it all in one. And so it's, to some extent, it's a race to the moon between Microsoft joining into the project management space outside of just Microsoft Project, of course, and Smartsheet and Monday and the other mid-market platforms really trying to provide a more cohesive all-in-one experience. So I'm excited to see them battle it out, and hopefully it's going to be really great for all of our users. And we're definitely excited about some of the features that they're providing. So Kelly did just let us know that File Library is for their new user model. So just as a heads up on that, they're providing a new user model. Everyone that's already purchased Smartsheet is on the old version. And what they're trying to do is entice you to do the new user model. And if so, you get really cool access to things like collections and file library. If you have questions about switching over, those are things that we can start to help, but just be aware that Smartsheet's really going to be trying to entice companies heading in January and beyond to this new user model. And they're going to try to entice you because of really cool functionality like collections and file library and some of these other things. So, yeah. All righty. I think that's about it for me. The only other thing, Kelly, I was questioning was just the resource management phase integration ability, but if no, I don't know if anyone on has the resource management. It is additional licensing. The history of resource management is it was 10,000 feet. It was purchased by Smartsheet. We're seeing more and more integration between resource management and Smartsheet. They call it resource management by Smartsheet. It's a separate module that allows for time tracking and roles and forecasting and capabilities and things like that. But it is kind of an additional licensing cost right now. We are seeing better and better integration, and I would anticipate that Smartsheet will continue to invest in this since it's repeatedly capacity planning, forecasting, resource management, #1 issue for PPM across the board. Anyone, if no one's on here is in resource management, we'll probably do a separate section on that one just because it is a separate licensing. All right, I will take it back for just a couple of minutes, and if anyone does have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, but I will just do a couple of wrap-up pieces. So again, Smartsheet is wrapping up their fiscal year the end of January. So if you are in the middle of looking at additional licensing, now is the time to negotiate. And Echo, I think I mentioned at the very beginning, I think I'm sharing my screen, right? Project management, if you're looking to extend your Smartsheet solution or you are comparing Smartsheet against other work management tools, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. There's kind of two different ways that Echo works, right? One is more from an hourly consulting, building out, solution architect, process improvement and things like that. And another one is team extension, as in, hey, we're growing, we lost someone to a family medical leave or something, or hey, Smartsheet has grown beyond what a single person in the IT or PMO team can help with. Now we're looking for some additional hours, some additional support, an additional team member to help us continue on with our journey. And so those are the two ways, more of an hourly consulting model or more of a team extension model saying, hey, I think Caroline, you were, helping a team out the end of last year for 25% of her time. So she was helping work through a team of about 12 different people from different departments, bringing them all together and really creating that work management methodology and helping them adopt. In that case, it was more Microsoft tools. Kelly has been working with one of our large clients for a year and a half, and they just signed on for another year, I think, on more of the team extension services, helping from a PMO standpoint as well as Smartsheet. So don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions along those lines. If not, you can definitely subscribe either to our YouTube channel or on our website if you're looking for more tips and tools. We do like to email out new videos as well as kind of a digest every month of the new content and events and things like that we have coming up. Again, Molly Yanis with Echo Consulting, Echolocity. Thank you for joining us today for What is New with Smartsheet. And don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. We love nerding out.